International Religious Freedom Roundtable, and I may be speaking out of turn when I say that religious tolerance is not enough for civil society to exist. The Union of Councils for Jews in the former Soviet Union, the UCSJ, learned experientially that a democratic government and acceptance of human rights, as well as religious tolerance, are prerequisites to a civil society. UCSJ is a grassroots movement, formed in 1970 spontaneously in over 30 cities in the U.S. to support the right of Soviet citizens, so-called refuseniks, to emigrate for actual and perceived discrimination on the basis of their religion, nationality, and namely that they were identified as Jews. The UCSJ was formalized in 1972 as a reaction to the Leningrad hijacking case, when a number of Jews and some Gentiles tried unsuccessfully to commandeer a plane to fly them out of the Soviet Union to show to the whole world that the Soviet Union kept people in tow and for false reasons and did not give them permission to leave the country. This was in violation of European United Nations charters on human rights obligations. And during the 1970s and up until 1991, the UCSJ spoke out against anti-Semitism and human rights abuses in the Soviet Union and provided Soviet Jews with assistance in their striving for emigration. The UCSJ was the spokesperson for the refuseniks movement. We listened to their voices and then told the world what was needed. And we worked for the release of political prisoners and prisoners of conscience. By 1975, there were about 45 councils working throughout the United States. Parallel unaffiliated branches were set up in France, Great Britain, Norway, Denmark, and Australia, and other countries around the world. Permanent protest campaigns were organized for releasing prisoners of conscience and fighters for democracy. Natan Sharansky, Andrei Sakharov, Joseph Beget, Vladimir Bukovsky, Eden Rudel, Sergei Kovalev, Father Gleb Kanunin, and many others. UCSJ members and volunteers regularly visited families of prisoners and refuseniks, made lists of prisoners and refuseniks, and brought necessary medicines and foods, especially for children. The UCSJ, with the support of the refuseniks community, lobbied for the adoption and later prolongation of the Jackson-Vanik and the Lautenberg amendments that played an important role in achieving freedom of exit from the country. This resulted in the greatest number of people leaving the Soviet Union and one of the greatest victories, in a sense, in the history of the world, in freeing large numbers. Millions of Soviet citizens were then able to leave the Soviet Union. But after 1991, a new realization occurred. The UCSJ created human rights organizations in the many newly emerging states of the former Soviet Union. Many of these have since become independent NGOs dedicated to the fight for democracy, human rights, and religious freedom. The UCSJ is a human rights NGO which cooperates and has mutual projects with organizations such as the Moscow Helsinki Group, Memorial, Movement for Human Rights, International Youth Human Rights Movement, SOLA, and with its leaders, such as Ludmila Arseva, Arseny Roginsky, Valentin Gefter, Alexander Verkhovsky, and others. Currently, the UCSJ maintains collegial relationships with these NGOs and acts as before as their unofficial representatives here in the United States. Today, pro-democracy, human rights, and religious freedom NGOs, especially Russia are in grave danger. The authorities on every level have a clear direction to attack these NGOs. It is the re-Stalinization of the Russian government. After refusing to be registered as foreign agents, more than 1,000 such NGOs were checked and searched by almost every type of federal and local authority, from the FSB to prosecutors to the Army to local anti-fire brigades. Just this week, we read about Gleb Ponomarev, age 72, the leader of the all-Russian movement for human rights, who was brutally beaten and kicked in Moscow while riot police watched. The offices of his organization were occupied, all locks were changed, and the workers forced out of the office. The intention of the authorities is clear: to close all NGOs that are effective in advocating for human rights and monitoring xenophobia. If the Russian authorities succeed in terminating these organizations, we will lose the opportunity to see a peaceful transition to a civil society. This applies to other former Soviet Union states, such as the Ukraine, Belarus, and others, which might well follow in the footsteps of Cuba. We need societies that include devoted citizens who work to promote human rights and civil liberties, as they are the only societies that can produce a peaceful transition in a country where the rule of law applies, human rights are respected, and religious tolerance prevails. To paraphrase Benjamin Franklin at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, who I think was an agent. We must all hang together, for assuredly we shall all hang separately. So when the International Religious Freedom Roundtable sends around a protest or a sign-on letter to the President of the United States or an official of the United Nations or OSCE or a foreign government to protest religious discrimination or human rights abuses, do not say this involves Sikhs, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, humanists, or Falun Gong or Jews, or some religion you know nothing about, but join in support